Of the Public Art Commission to order. This is the September 14th meeting. And Mr. Hoopy, could you please call the roll?
Yes. John Kotarski,
Here.
Allison Buck,
Here.
Connie Brown, Colleen Crawley,
Here.
David Esau,
Here.
Bob Miller,
Here.
Patty Smith, Councilmember Chip Smith, David Zinn.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Hoopy. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. So is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Commissioner Esau and
Crawley.
Commissioner Crowley seconded. So all those in favor of accepting the agenda as submitted,
Aye.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, we now have an agenda. This is the time at our meeting that we invite public comment, so we would love to hear from you about a topic that is on our agenda or about anything else, public art. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak? There are no members. We'll move on to our next order of business, and that is the approval of the minutes of the July meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll move.
Commissioner Buck moved the minutes, and Commissioner Zinn seconded that. Are there any additions or deletions to those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, we have approval of the minutes of the July 2017 meeting. The next item on our agenda is old business, and we will invite a presentation by Jennifer Nelson and Amber Miller. Amber is from the DDA and Jennifer's from our staff here regarding the DDA Fifth Avenue and Detroit Street CIP as it relates to the Coleman Jewett Memorial. So could either of you please come forward and...
Thank you for giving us your time today. We have a pretty brief presentation. We'll walk through it and then we'd like to get your feedback.
Okay, so once again, I'm Jennifer Nelson. I'm from the City of Ann Arbor, and I'm the project manager representing the city. And Amber is representing the DDA. And this project is a collaboration between the city and the DDA. The city is undertaking the reconstruction of, of Fifth Avenue between Kingsley and Catherine. And we are also reconstructing part of Detroit Street between Kingsley and Fifth. The reconstruction is being driven by water main replacement and some other underground utility work, and also the condition of the road. As part of the project too, we are resurfacing Fifth between Beeks and Kingsley, and then between Catherine and Ann Street. So basically, at the end of next year, we'll have a nice new road surface between Beeks and Ann Street. And the city, or the DDA, also wanted to undertake a pretty major streetscape project, just trying to make the area more friendly and welcoming to users and visitors, looking at replacing the trees, putting in some amenities, benches and whatnot, and also trying to improve the usage of the space, especially the plaza that's at the northwest corner of Detroit and Fifth. It's basically bounded by Detroit, Fifth, and the Farmers Market. And to date, we've spent quite a bit of time with the design and layout of that area. We've met with a number of stakeholders throughout the city to gather their input and feedback on a lot of the components of the design. So we are kind of nearing really hashing out the details of the design. So that's kind of where the project stands right now.
And we have some important next steps with the project. The first of which you see on your screen is to work with this commission as well as the Public Market Advisory Commission to finalize the location for the Coleman Jewett Memorial. We have received some differing directions. So the Public Market Advisory Commission had passed a resolution to locate the memorial on 4th Avenue. And we understand this commission's expectation is that it be located on 5th Avenue. So that's why we're touching base with both commissions, and we hope to get agreement to move forward. And as Jennifer said, we're also finalizing the construction documents, and we expect to be under construction next spring. So we'll just briefly walk you through 2 potential locations and then get some input to take to the Market Advisory Commission. The first location is the existing location on 4th Avenue. This location is in the shade, which we know is critical given the material of the chairs. It's also, from what we hear and what we observe, fairly highly used. We have also heard that because these chairs are so special, they bring a special element to the 4th Avenue side of the market, which doesn't often get as much attention. And then with the new design, there is the potential to relocate the chairs to the 5th Avenue side of the market. So what you see on your screen, here's 5th Avenue looking south. Carytown Market and Shops is behind you. And this is the view as you enter the plaza alongside the Farmers Market building. This location is also in the shade. We may need a temporary shade structure if we were to use this location until the trees got to a more mature height. And it's quite a prominent location as well. Here's another viewpoint. So one potential challenge that we've heard with this location is a challenge that park staff face pretty regularly, and that is how do they treat memorials consistently and equally. So within this current space, there are 3 existing memorials. Those memorials will not be reinstalled into the plaza space. The plaques will be reinstalled, but not the objects themselves. So that's something to take into account. But that, we said it would be brief, and that is what we wanted to walk you through today. And now we'd like your feedback, and then next week we'll meet with the Public Market Advisory Commission.
Thank you, Amber and Jennifer. Are you expecting just a discussion among us? Would you like a resolution to some point? What are your expectations?
I think what we need, but I also would look to Craig, I think what we need is a discussion and some general direction. I don't know if we need a resolution, but some clear direction at this point would be good, and then we'll take that to the Public Market Advisory Commission.
And this commission would give its direction by resolution.
Excellent. Well, before we enter into any discussions, why don't we have a motion on the floor? Mr. Issa?
I will move that we recommend to relocate the chairs to the 5th Avenue location, just so we can start discussion on it.
A second.
Is there a second? And Commissioner Miller seconds it. So the motion that we are discussing is to move the chairs to 5th Avenue, which was the original intent, my understanding. Is that correct, David?
That's my understanding as well, but I
Yes,
don't know
yes,
where I've
yes.
heard that.
That was the original intent of the project. The original intent of the project was to locate the chairs on 5th, but at that time, there was not adequate shade there.
So this spot that's identified in this picture right here, is that close to where we had originally been saying they were gonna give you to?
The original was to put it on 5th. The desire was to put it in what I would call the triangle near the solar board that's there now, but no exact location was determined at at that time.
Well, and that whole space is being sort of redesigned, so
Yes.
putting it somewhere randomly in there was just,
My understanding was also, the general intent was to get it as close to Coleman Jewett's stall as possible. And those were the parameters of the funding for it as well. Is there discussion?
well, I'm not familiar with where the stall was, where was the stall?
Right near the location, they proposed it to be on Fifth.
So-
It's close, almost,
Just in the
He,
awning space
he
right
had,
there.
I believe, the northernmost stall
Okay.
on
Nearest to
that,
the
on that
shops.
side.
Closest to the Sparrow Market
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
there for the whole
So real
time.
close to where this is.
On the Fifth Avenue side, yes.
And the location that you're showing in the picture that's up right now, you talked about that it'll take a while for those trees to grow. So this is a new, the planting bed is new, and the trees will be planted small and obviously take a little while to grow. Okay.
And Amber, if this is the location, or maybe I should direct it to Jennifer, that you would install some kind of temporary sort of shade until those trees mature, is that?
Yes, we haven't really discussed options. We were thinking maybe market umbrellas, but that's open for discussion at this time.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Yes?
Have there
Commissioner
been
Musa?
complaints from people about the current location?
Not
Or-
that,
or-
not that we have heard, and
Or plaudits for it, or anything like that, or?
so earlier on, during the project, and when we had the project laid out and the alternate location was designated for us to use, there were complaints, there were, there's a lot of dis-ease. But after we had the opening, and they've been there now and established themselves, I don't think we've heard anybody complain, and I think they've actually been embraced where they are.
I'll also note that Stephanie Willett, the market manager, is present and I think open to questions if anybody has any.
And does anyone have any questions for Stephanie?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Miller?
So-
Stephanie, could you come to the podium, please?
I'd love to get your 2 cents, since you're there on a regular basis. It's my impression that the location they're in now seems like a good location, but I'd love to hear your feedback.
Sure. So I have not
To the
been.
mic, please.
Oh, thank you. Hi. So I have been market manager since March. So it was not. I did not participate when we originally installed the chairs. So I can only kind of speak to how they're used now. As to your earlier question, I have not heard any complaints about their current location since I started. And I'm at the office every day, 5 days a week, and they're used very regularly. Market staff, I like having them there because it's kind of in a sheltered, nice kind of park area, and it's right at the entrance when you come in the doors off 4th Avenue. So I think it adds something for us, as well as being kind of a more quiet spot to use. I think 5th Avenue, it has, I don't know if this is a pro or a con, but there's a lot more foot traffic there. So 4th Avenue, it's a bit quieter for people. I think using the chairs is more of a get out of the sun and get out of the traffic type of place to rest. But I do like having them where they are.
Does either location work better in terms of the market activities? I mean, is one of them in the way more or anything like that, or?
Both would work for the market and how it operates. Personally, I think I prefer the 4th a little bit more, just more because I think that it provides seating and sort of an entrance to a place we don't already have that. I think that's sort of special about it. Whereas and 5th, what we're concerned about is the sunlight and the heat on the chairs, at least until the trees are bigger. Whereas now that's not a problem. And then there is also a lot of seating there and the picnic tables already, so I feel like it adds something unique on Fourth. But either way, it works for us.
Thank you.
Stephanie, have you had any contact with the Jewett family or the donors?
No, not since I started.
Have you, Jennifer? Amber, have you? I bring this up because I was on the commission at the time that this came about. And this was a very difficult, long slog, raising about $60,000, all private money from individual donors. And when it was raised, there were certain certain assurances made. And it was that the chairs would be close to Mr. Jewett's stall. In fact, it was to be exactly where his stall was. That the donors sort of agreed that as long as it was near that stall, it would be acceptable to them. But if it wasn't, there were a few donors that wanted their money back. They felt that it was a bait and switch. And we're talking about $15,000 to $20,000. So the chairs were complete, and we asked the donors and the family if they would agree to a temporary location where they are now, with the idea that they would be moved near this stall. So that is fresh in my mind, that I like the chairs where they are, but I also like the fact that we've had citizens step up and donate $60,000, and I think we owe it to them to maintain the integrity of that relationship. So until they are willing to agree to leave the chairs where they are, I'm not willing to support not moving them to the location that was agreed to. But that's my sort of take on it. Any,
I kind of agree with that. I mean, this is a somewhat privately funded project, and that's unique for what we've been doing, and it'd be a disservice to disrupt that.
particularly because they are an important stakeholder and they haven't been engaged.
Do we have the wherewithal to reach out to all of the donors to re-poll their wants and needs?
I'm sure that it's a public record, and I'm sure that Jennifer could find those, and the Jewett family are available. So I would encourage you, if you think that you are serious about wanting that, that certainly you would need their buy-in to get my support. And I don't know about the rest of the commission, but I don't think we're prepared at this time to agree to leave the chairs where they are, to do anything different than what the agreement was with those donors, unless they come in and say, you know, it's a great place, we love it there.
And I could see holding a public meeting, inviting them to come and showing them these slides and talking about the two locations and having a conversation at that point and giving them the opportunity to weigh in one way or the other.
Is the donor question the only issue that we have with leaving them where they are? I mean, it would be the only issue I would have
It's the
personally.
only issue I would have too. I aesthetically,
Yeah, I think you've made a good argument for keeping them where they are,
Yeah.
so.
they're used,
Do you
I
have,
like them.
do you have a timeline that you're trying to work with them?
We are looking to put the plans out for bid in December, so we'd have a couple months at least to work with that.
Would you do something different with this immediate location that they would be moved to if you didn't have chairs to go there?
No, I don't think so, right?
No, we can,
So
we
in
can
terms of
accommodate.
bidding
can
your
accommodate
plans,
it.
there's really no
Yeah, we can.
difference
Yeah.
in the
accommodate
scope.
We just want to make sure it's included in the bid so that we get the price is bid out rather
To
than something we
relocate them
add
if they
later.
need to be relocated.
Yeah.
How much cost is associated, or what's associated with the relocation?
We haven't specifically looked into that, but since we are redoing this whole area, we don't really see the relocation as a substantial
Okay.
cost increase.
If you do reach out to them, I would expect you to do more than just call a meeting, and if they don't show up, say, hey, they had an opportunity. No. They need to positively say, I agree, absent of that, you wouldn't have my support. So that they really need they need to buy into this and actively say, we support it, and do so in an email writing or something to that effect.
If I could ask a question, would a written poll to them be what you're looking for?
That would be an appropriate way to address it, I think, a simple way to address it. And look for a majority, and then that would be an
Well,
answer.
majority of the responses, because I don't know.
Yeah,
if
and
you
that's
get
what I'm saying, a majority of the
majority
responses.
even responding.
Yeah.
Well, myself, I would want everybody that contributed money to agree to it, because absent of that, they feel, in my recollection of this discussion, absent of that, they feel that there was an agreement.
You would like a unanimous?
Yeah, I would like,
And so what if
I-
we don't get a unanimous?
well, then we go with the agreement that we had with them. That if you can get,
By default, you move them, I guess, is what it's saying.
pardon me?
You're saying by default, you move them.
That the agreement is that we move them. That if in fact all of the donors agree to this change, then I would support to the change. But, you know, I don't want one donor to say, you know, we did a bait and switch, and that's exactly what they told us.
But I feel a majority would be a more reasonable way to approach it. I don't think you'll ever get a unanimous vote. And so by default, you're almost
Yeah, it's a
committing
waste
to
of
moving
time.
them. It's a waste of time. You'll never get a unanimous vote.
Well-
So going down the path you've laid out, I think it's by default moving them. So I
Yeah.
don't think that's a fair,
Expectation.
yeah.
I agree. I agree. I believe that we should abide by the original agreement.
That's, okay. I disagree.
Okay? Any other discussion?
I mean, I would, like I said, I would be open to having a public meeting and inviting people and having discussion. And I think that's generally how I've seen city business handled, is public meetings and attendance and giving people the information and letting them weigh in one way or the other, and
I would be
participation
willing
is-
to attend and help
Yeah.
manage that meeting.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think that's,
If
A general
if we can-
practice.
If we can work together to do something like
Mhm.
that. I've been on the commission from the inception of this to now, so at least I have some background information a little bit.
I feel that making sure that the donors recognize how popular the spot is important. Because the project was conceived in a sort of a vacuum. They had a vision, and yes, that was the proposal that was presented to them, but they never saw another option. And now this temporary location, the community has really embraced it, and seeing it being used, and, you know, I think that would be a really positive to, endorse your argument, is to show them that it's actually a great location. It's farther from his stall, but it still has has a memory for him and things like that. And then I would also have to agree with Commissioner Miller that the unanimous, or the 100% does seem extreme. I'm even picturing that maybe some people dropped $5 in the donation. I mean, I think there might be a variety of price points that people donated, and to think that someone who maybe wrote a small check just because they really liked Mr. Jewett's work and really liked him as a man and things like that, and then they could hold out for this, that does seem extreme. So I would be more in favor of a majority of the donors.
Commissioner Esau?
Yeah. I guess I would like to amend my motion to suggest that we recommend that the chairs be relocated to the Fifth Avenue location unless the city can get approval from donors representing at least, say, 75% of the donated cost. How about that? Rather than a majority of $5 donors who only gave $1,000 total, but
Did you say 75%?
Of the
that
cost.
was my thought.
I don't know if we know, we have a donor list, but I don't know if we
We
know.
don't have an
who.
amount. We know a handful of the larger donors, but I think other than those, we don't know who gave $1 and we don't know who gave $500.
Then that doesn't work.
And I wouldn't feel it would be fair to slight somebody who gave $1 against somebody who gave 500, actually. I think giving is giving.
I think it would be fair to get approval from the larger donors that we do know about. I mean, if one of them objected and wanted to rescind their donation as a result, that would be very problematic and embarrassing for us, I think.
And the family, I think the family should be on board too.
Yeah.
So,
Anybody have a suggestion for how to
well, are you,
wordsmith that?
wordsmith it? How about 65% of the donors? It's more than a majority, it's not a supermajority, and the family. 65% of the donors and the family?
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
So,
Just caution, and when we do polls like that, we're doing good to get 50% of the cards back that we sent in. So if you're saying 65%, that's almost would be looking for an unanimous response back.
Well, then at least we'll have some data to make a better decision based on it.
I'm comfortable
word
with
it
whatever you
that
want, I'm
way,
just
then. Maybe-
warning you our experience.
Maybe we
with
should
polls.
word it in a way that we can make a recommendation based on the information we gather. So instead of basing it on the actual data, we will base it on the data we receive. We will base our decision on reviewing the data, but not specifically on the data. Is that not acceptable?
Yeah, I like making the recommendation at this point, just based on, we're gonna look at the data and then at that point make a further recommendation, basically.
What I'm hearing you say, and I'll let you put it in your own words, is that you are directing staff to poll the donors to receive their opinion about relocating the chairs to Fifth, or not.
Or-
Well,
No.
we don't have the right to direct staff, I would say, so I would say we are saying that our recommendation is to relocate the chairs unless additional information is brought to us demonstrating.
Yeah, I understand you can't direct staff, but
Yeah.
you can direct me to
Okay.
have staff do that.
Okay.
So there's not a time challenge at this particular point. My understanding is that we do not meet again until November. So if,
We could get the poll out and back by then.
if you want our recommendation now, my sense is, we're gonna recommend that you do the original thing and move it. We're very concerned about the donors. So we wanna make sure that those donors are in agreement, however you wanna shape that. And 2 or 3 people that donated $5 that just want to object to everything probably wouldn't be as influential to us as the family in mass not agree.
Right now, you have a resolution, and a motion on the floor to move the chairs to Fifth.
Correct. And are you amending your motion?
I guess I would say I will amend it, or,
You could withdraw it and make a new motion to direct
keep
me
them
to poll the donors to find out.
And come back at the November meeting?
With more information.
I think I would like to leave it that I move to relocate the chairs to Fifth Avenue based on commitments that we made to donors, unless staff is able to poll the donors and provide us information,
That may-
evidence that they find it acceptable to leave them where they are?
Is that
And if
a
I-
friendly second?
Commissioner Crowley, is that agreeable to
It
you?
would-
Yes.
Miller was the second.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that's right.
Was it?
I would prefer it not. I feel like we're still defaulting to moving them unless. I feel like it's not giving us a lot of wiggle room. So,
So you might have to withdraw your,
No, so what happens is the suggested amendment
is voted
looks
on.
for a second, and then you discuss the amendment.
Is there a second?
I would
to-
second it.
And Commissioner Alice Buck seconded the amendment to the motion, which is to move the chairs to Fifth
Until review of.
Un-
further
Unless
information.
staff provides evidence that the donor community finds it acceptable to leave them where they are.
So, is there any discussion about that amendment to the motion?
will we lump the family in with the donor community? I think that's a, donor community
Yes.
I find is a good way of wording it. So that seems suitable to me, but John, you had kind of broken them into two separate elements.
Well, I don't see them as
Okay.
different. The stakeholders, as,
Okay.
you know, the donors.
That's great.
But I think that they're an important voice. And I think they need to be a part of this, the family as well as the
Okay.
donors.
And we're
Could we
hopeful
add
that
just
they will bring
one,
back
one
information.
detail? Next week, we're on the agenda for the Public Market Advisory Commission. We could bring them the recommendation to relocate to Fifth Ave, and then only pull donors if the Public Market Advisory Commission disagrees with that recommendation.
That's fine.
I would have them go forward
Okay.
with their recommendation, and you can tell them that the recommendation is the fifth. And we'll put the caveat in, if there isn't agreement between the two commissions, we'll do the poll.
Okay, so,
Sounds
the motion.
Friendly.
We have a motion, and it's been seconded. There's been discussion on the amendment to the motion. So, all those in favor of the amended motion,
Of the amendment first.
of the amendment to the motion,
Yes.
which is to recommend they be moved, however.
The amendment was to suggest staff as an alternative, getting information from the
Yes.
donors.
So that's the amendment. So do we all understand what we're voting on? All those in favor of that amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So now the motion has been amended. And is there a discussion on the motion as amended? So the motion, could you please repeat the motion for
I
us?
will try. The Public Art Commission recommends relocation of the Jewett chairs to the Fifth Avenue location unless staff is able to provide evidence that the donor community finds it acceptable to leave them in the current location on Fourth.
And unless you recommend to move it to fifth, unless the donor community indicates otherwise, and but what I'm trying to capture is Amber's disagreement with if the,
Yeah, if the, what's the,
Parks
if the
Commission,
Parks
the-
Advisory
Market
says move it to
Advisory
fifth, then it's a done
we'll
deal.
just
Yeah.
move it, yeah.
Yeah, well, our recommendation is to move them to Fifth, so.
Okay.
Yeah, that one, yeah.
Yeah,
We're
I get
Unless
it.
we're
there's
trying
evidence-
to-
Unless there's
yeah.
reason otherwise. then-
So, good.
All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. So you have a motion, you can figure out what it is. But, no, do you have any questions about our intent?
I don't think so.
And it's not the location at all, it really is about the interplay of these people. That
getting
believe
the
one
support.
thing and feel that somehow.
Make sure they're behind whatever happens.
Yeah, and that's really what we care about most. Okay?
I do have a question regarding the poll. Are you recommending, I'm just wondering whose responsibility that poll is going to be?
It's going to be mine and Jennifer's, if it comes to the poll.
If it comes to
We would like you personally,
Yeah.
On the weekend.
in your spare time.
No, thank you so very much. Really
Thank you for your
appreciate
time.
it, and please come back.
Thank you.
We enjoy company. Now on to new business. Before we get into new business, there are 4 items on our agenda for new business. The first is a year-end report, and you have had a draft copy of that previous to the meeting. The item 2, 3, and 4 are for discussion. So I would like to take the first item, the year-end report, which you have, I believe, attached to the agenda. And could I have a motion to accept that year-end report? Commissioner Crowley moved. Is there a second? And Commissioner Esau. So is there any discussion on the year-end report? Yes.
Since I'm new to the committee, could you clarify what the time frame is, since it's September and I'm seeing a year-end report? What is the window that this would actually be done?
Commissioner Esau probably knows better than I, but I believe it is 60 days after the end of the fiscal year, which is June 31st. Is
I
that-
don't have any idea of that.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so it's
Sounds
60
good.
days after June 31st.
Thank you.
And we are late, but so are a number of others.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I have,
Commissioner Esau.
when John sent this out, he was very generous with attribution. He did all the work on this, and Allison and I just gave a couple comments, so I just want to be sure that that's clear.
Well, to be really honest about it, I cut and pasted David's report from the CIP committee. But I think I was kind of surprised pleasantly that we've accomplished a lot, and I think we should really take a moment to really think about that. We brought on new members. Allison has done a heroic job of bringing in folks, even though we didn't have much of an audience for those folks. But it suggests the breadth and depth of individuals that we've brought before the commission and before the public, because we are cablecast. And we do have projects in process. We have public art stuff that's actually happening. But I think more than anything, what I'm most proud of is what David and his committee was able to do in terms of developing a criteria and then applying that criteria to CIP projects. I know that Bob can probably speak to this. We have been trying for literally years to do it, and we've felt our way around, and this resonates with me. Does it with you, Bob?
It
feels
does,
good.
yeah, absolutely. I have one punctuation
Please,
correction,
please.
but that's it. So on the page, it's 1, 2, 3, page 4, education promotion, just make a capital P for promotion.
Okay.
And that's a question, but I'm pretty sure from the way you guys have been laying it out, that would be a capital P potentially.
Page 4?
I think it's P.
Oh, no, the very first page of the annual report.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yep, I'm sorry.
Education promotion, that's,
Yeah.
Would that be a capital P?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense.
yep.
But I think it's wonderful.
Any other additions or deletions, comments? All those in favor of accepting the annual report as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye?
All those opposed? We have an annual report, which will now go to the city council, and we can follow up personally with council, and at least we'll have something to have in hand when we talk to them. The next item on the agenda and are a series of discussions that these are kind of strategic issues. These are issues that keep kind of coming up in various discussions about various things. How do we select art? And what really do we do? What's our role? In addition, that I've been asked by a number of folks to consider some kind of identifying plaque, either actually to identify what exactly this art is, and that in fact it is a part of the public art program of Ann Arbor, and that actually this is the product of the work of citizen volunteers on the Public Art Commission. So all of those have been talked about before, but I would like to start focusing, moving forward and developing a more coherent understanding of how we want the process to go, what we do, and how do we identify ourselves for this public art. Normally in a discussion like this, there's going to be no motion. We would move into a committee of the whole. I would step down and someone else would chair that committee. But rather than doing that, I'll just be more lax in the discussion. So please try to be respectful, give turns, not speak over one another, and I'll try to recognize everyone. I would like David to kind of give a little bit of background and lead the discussion about selection guidelines. Maybe you want
Sure.
to start there?
Sure, well, this is something that the CIP committee has started talking about once we kind of finished our urgent business of developing the CIP recommendations. It is one of the things that our charter from council asks, or says that we should do as a committee, is make recommendations on the selection process for artworks. And I don't know that we have necessarily done much of that in the past, so we were just starting to talk about it. John had actually kind of hoped that we might have something to recommend for this meeting. We're a long ways from that yet, especially since most of us kind of feel, I think, like we're flailing a little bit trying to figure out what to recommend. But when we were talking about what was going to be happening at this meeting and that we didn't have anything to recommend yet, there seemed to be time to throw it out to the whole board or the whole committee and see if anyone had any particular concerns that we should take into account. The one thing that we've talked about somewhat extensively relating to the artwork on the stadium retaining wall is the selection process related to a public vote, and ideally that coming toward or at the end of the process. But beyond that, are there particular processes that we think should be incorporated, or anything that isn't being done, especially so far? So this is just an opportunity to throw out things if you have concerns that we should make note of and include in our.
So is the city hoping that we would provide some guidelines that they would provide to those that they contract with to do the
Yes.
selection? Okay. So it will, so that we don't run into like the snafu we had with
Yes.
the.
Yeah.
That's really what
So sort of just like
drove
best
this.
practices, not this is exactly how you should select the art.
Yeah, I think, obviously, I think it's going to vary, depending on where the artwork is, what the cost level is, and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't make sense to do a $100,000 process for a $100 artwork.
Yeah.
For our committee discussion, Commissioner Brown did a really nice kind of a summary of the history of the projects she was familiar with and how each one, and what you see from that is there isn't any real process that has been consistent from one to another, and that the type of project might cause it to be in different directions and things like that. So, so what we talked about was the possibility that there's it's sort of an outline, and if the project comes to us in this direction, then you might follow these steps. And if it happens to be this criteria, but we're still going through the weeds and trying to figure out what would define sending it down a different path, or making a recommendation that there's a group like the Art Center that handles it, or whatever it is. So as a new commissioner, I really appreciated that Connie took the time to write that for me, because I hear a discussion about these past projects and I was not really clear on how some of them came to be. So that was very useful, but now the next step just has to happen.
Craig, would you have any clarification on if there's certain types of projects or level of financing that you're looking for this type of recommendation for, or?
Not particularly on level of financing. I think one of the issues that on the stadium wall project, the issue that staff wrestled with, which wasn't really in the selection criteria written out, is maintainability of the art. That the art is something that is amenable to being easily maintained in the location it's in. I know that that was one of the things that was driving the staff's choice. So other than that, I'm not aware of any particular item on any of the other art projects
So
that,
you can't narrow it down?
no. But that would be one criteria I think staff would be looking to have explicitly put into the call for art as you,
And is there a certain percentage that the city feels like of the whole project maintenance cost that's reasonable? Or that is being set aside or anything like that?
no, because under the current program, the fund that funds the art is responsible for the maintenance. And again, it's not looking at a dollar amount as much as is it reasonable to maintain? Our, and it's difficult to go beyond that. We have some art out there now that we have had some extraordinary maintenance costs on. And we hope not to replicate that. So it's considering what the art is, what its installation is.
And I think up to this point, we've relied on the artist to tell us what the maintenance plan is.
Yes.
Rather than have the city evaluate it and make their own judgment on what the maintenance is.
Yes, but
right?
I think as staff, we can weigh in if the artist is proposing a reasonable plan or the art is reasonable for its location.
Mhm. Okay.
Bob, did you have something that you wanted to?
I don't think so, relative to, well, so I had just mentioned to David, and I was trying to get the name of what I was trying to talk about, and he called it a decision tree. So maybe coming up with some sort of very, very simplistic way to funnel a decision on how a project is kind of worked through.
Mhm.
But I think that one of the bigger problems as a commission we've come across in the past is following our own guidelines. Because we make these rules and then they get put in a folder or a binder and then they get put on a shelf and then we forget to use them. So we have a lot of stuff that a lot of people have put a lot of time into. It's a matter of figuring out how to implement it every time we do a project. And I think we're challenged in that way. And by not having a administrator who is a full-time person for the Art Commission, it challenges us even greater. I think the burden being put on Craig Hoopy is not fair and not gonna get the job done in the way it needs to be done 100%. And Craig is able to put it to those who are managing the projects, but again, they manage the projects, they don't make the decisions on how the art should be handled. So I think there's subtleties and facets to this that need to be looked at, and how we address it is difficult. So I don't know if there's a clear answer, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Well, and you bring up maintenance and, there's a staff person who's assigned to the project while it's a construction project and being put in place, but I don't know how that relationship carries on after the project.
As I said, it becomes the responsibility of the fund that funded the project. And example would be the stadium wall. That will be Public Works that will be maintaining that.
So Mike's on the project right now, right?
Mike is the project engineer out of engineering for it. It then gets turned over to Public Works to maintain.
So
But
And
they,
they aren't involved right now in the
they,
process?
they
or-
aren't directly, but there is discussion between engineering and Public Works. An example right now is your manhole cover art. That will be Public Works handling it and Public Works maintaining them. So there is some disconnect, but it's not large, it's all underneath my purview. And we are fortunate that Mike has strong ownership and does not walk away from his
Yeah.
projects.
Let me just add some of my history to it. Is when I got on, there was the perception that a small group of folks on this commission made the decision. They picked the art and decorated the city according to their aesthetic taste. And that there was little or no public input. And we were using taxpayer dollars, and this was a major criticism. And so the challenge is always to how does the public actually play a role in the selection process? And each project attempted to do that in different ways. That generally speaking, it was thought that experts could winnow it down to a few ideal projects and then let the public decide among those ideal projects. That seemed to make sense the way that, to do it. That I certainly was in favor of seeing how that would play out with some organizations trying to do that. The challenge became is that in this particular wall that we had, that the consultant hit all the marks of the contract. However, even though 800 people wanted one project, 5 people overrode that. That seemed to me to be worse than actually not going out and asking people for their input. So it brought to my mind that maybe we need to be more explicit that if you're going to go out and ask for people's opinion, that should be the last in line. There are other important elements to the selection process, like the maintenance of it, that seems to slip under. That, you know, even though it is really flashy, those flashes have a certain infrastructure that can, you know, wear out or just break, as opposed to something that doesn't. And that needs to be an important part of that selection. But to me, the first part is to suggest guidelines, not a list, an encyclopedia of rules, guidelines that we would like outreach to be done as much as possible. And we would like that outreach to be valued, to be an important sort of voice, and not to be discarded just because you don't like it. How we frame that into guidelines, I'm not so sure. That, I think, is an issue that maybe I'm in a minority. You know, maybe others think like, look, you know, the public, they really don't know as well as we do, so shouldn't we be making the decisions? And I think that we
Would
should have
anyone like
that.
to go on the record saying that?
I don't, not with the cameras going, right? So, but, so I think there's a way in which we can, I would like us to be able to describe it, and I would like us to revisit it every year. We're actually required to do that by the ordinance. All of our guidelines and what is it called, work rules, or there's something that David has read 3 times and indexed, but we have formally, as Bob has suggested, all of these things that we've taken care and written down and stuck on a shelf, we're required to revisit those every year and make changes to them. So the point tonight was to get this discussion going. Do you think we should have guidelines?
I mean, I think I kind of like Bob's idea of the decision tree and putting something very basic together, but nothing super detailed and specific. Makes sense.
I like
I'd
that.
agree. One question for Craig, since it will probably come up at some point in the discussion process through this. Do you know what the laws or rules are related to local preferences for, for local or Michigan artists compared to national?
I will ask the question of the attorneys, and they can give us a formal answer.
Okay. It's certainly
If I were
something
to
that
try to
comes
do it
up.
off the top of my head, you'd be getting legal advice from an engineer.
Yeah, my understanding is that the city can't say it has to be specifically a local artist. They can't
recall
restrain
that being
the,
correct. and
they
I-
can't restrain the,
Well, that was the
call
advice.
to-
I don't know why it can't. I
But-
see other
but I've been
communities
told,
doing
but-
it, but,
Are they? They're
It'd be good to
specifically
verify.
saying, an Ann
Local
Arbor
artist.
artist, Ann Arbor artist only or something like
yeah.
that?
Instead of entering into the discussion, I'll
Sure,
ask for
Yeah,
ask the
our,
attorney.
that
Yeah,
clarification.
sorry.
Okay.
The other, I'd like to ask if the document, the documents, the things I'm being told are put on a shelf. Where's that shelf? And how would I access
It's in a
it?
3-ring binder, and David has seen it.
Okay.
Is that correct,
I haven't
David?
seen a binder.
You haven't seen a binder, but
You've
you,
emailed me lots of stuff.
okay.
I think I have a binder.
Okay.
I don't have all of the documents, but I don't know if it's the same binder we're all given.
we can provide you the ordinance,
Yes.
your
Guidelines.
your bylaws,
The bylaws I've
and the
seen.
guidelines. I believe the
That's-
current guidelines are at the administrator's office for his review because it is the amended.
Yeah.
Because it's, the way the ordinance reads, he is the one who approves or disapproves them.
So
we
those
can-
are the
we can-
3 items,
Okay.
the ordinance, the bylaws, the guidelines.
And we can provide those to you. I'll have Anita,
And those guidelines and bylaws, we are required to review annually and make recommendations. And they flow from each other. The bylaws flow from the ordinance, and it really is the way we function as a commission. And the guidelines are what we're talking about.
Bob was making it sound like maybe there was more
Right.
past discussion of this particular topic. And I know on the CIP stuff that there were a lot of attempts at that in the past that I looked through to try to understand the process. I don't know if there's more on art selection.
No,
In the
but
history.
your reference to the CIP is
Yeah.
more weighted into what I was thinking, and I think it's been arduous.
Yeah.
And I think we've struggled with that aspect of it, but I don't think we've gone over and had a way to kind of, how to deal with a specific project. And I
Okay.
think that's what we're talking about now.
Yeah.
So generally, you think we should have guidelines, they should be simple, and we'll move from there. I will ask folks in an email, anyone that want to volunteer, so I won't embarrass you now, but if you would like to volunteer to sort of participate in that. Before we move on to
The CIP committee was already talking about this.
okay, so that you want to take that on? Continue, that's
We'd
excellent.
We'd started,
Perfect.
so we might as well.
step forward
Absolutely.
into the sword.
Thank you.
And I know that David Zinn has to
Yes.
leave
I
because
apologize.
he has some business, but we appreciate it, David. Thank you so much. And make lots of money.
With art, are you insane?
Exactly. What, are you crazy? The other was a discussion about what role we would like the commission, we imagine the commission to play in the selection. do we, how would we describe our role in that selection process? Do we want to be the final arbiter? How do we see it? Anyone care to start?
Well, I know in our discussions on the CIP committee, I don't think any of us envisioned the Public Art Commission being the ones who were making that, doing that selection process. We were just trying to find recommendations to the city for presumably staff to run that selection process, maybe through a consultant, maybe themselves. I had the impression that you talked about earlier, that this committee, in past years, it was kind of treating it like a private project, and I don't want to go there. I don't think that's good for the public art process.
I would say that if there's a selection team being put together to help guide a particular piece of art, I think it would be advisable to have a member of this commission be present on that team and
Could
be
be.
keeping us up to date, and then I think it would always be nice to then have the presentation to us. Not that we would have the final say, but it would be nice for us to be aware of it, and because we'd have a committee or a commissioner present on that committee, we'd be in the loop. Nothing should be a big surprise to us or catch us off guard or things like that. So that was one thought. And not every project will be big enough to have a whole committee. That's
Do you want the recommendations, the city wants to hear what the art commission weigh in on a recommendation? I think it's, so do you see the art commission as making a recommendation, as it did with the Stadium Boulevard wall? It was presented to us, and we could either recommend, as staff was recommending it, support that recommendation, or not.
I think that the recommendation would come more from, did it follow the process? Did it follow our guidelines? Was there community involvement? If it meets those requirements, so we're not really voting on the quality of the art, or how we feel about the particular artist, but we're verifying for the city's benefit that the process was followed.
We're giving oversight to the selection process, that we're making sure that the selection process,
That would be my view of it.
integrity.
Yeah, I mean, just like the Stadium Bridge project, you were the consultant who went to their committee meetings and
Right.
sort of reported back. And then they presented to us and we asked them questions about the process and then ultimately recommended what they were recommending based on thinking they did everything well. So I don't think that we're ever voting on personal opinion on the art. It's on the selection process.
On the aesthetic.
Yeah.
We're not a jury among the artists, that we just give feedback and support or challenge the process if we don't think the process was. So, Bob?
And I think we would also get feedback not only from the person who was, the company that was consulted, but also from the city. I mean, we have a relationship with the city too, and so if they have a, question or concern, we would address that as well.
I would want to question and suggest, would we weight each item? So would they all be weighted equally? Would the city's concern for maintenance be equal value to the art center's decision and somebody else's, and the public recommendation? Are they all equally weighted, or do each ones have different values? And it's a question, I don't know.
Well, we're not talking so much about selection, and I think that the maintenance issue was, it should be a part of the selection. But we're assuming that selection process is outsourced to another organization. But when it is outsourced, what then is the role of the art commission?
I guess what I'm asking also, though, is if the public says, we love this piece of work, the contractor says, there's this other piece that we're recommending, and the city weighs in and says their opinion, it's our job to put all that together into a pile and make a choice. I'm sorry, Craig?
If I could jump in, I think I heard earlier that you would have a decision tree
Yeah, okay,
process.
great.
That would
Would
have,
hopefully prevent
Hopefully
that.
that'll help them.
yeah, that would have winnowed some of that out.
Yeah, I would hope that the maintenance would be an early screen.
Yes, I agree. And so
Right.
maybe that'll be part of the decision tree, and then
Yeah.
that won't be an issue.
The
Yeah.
question would be more as, I
Right,
think it was raised, is, has the process been correctly followed?
correct. And I will
Thanks.
say that on Stadium Boulevard, maintainability is mentioned in the proposal, but I think on projects of a certain scale, you're gonna have to be more specific
Yes.
and ask the artist to actually talk about it, and really give some proof of what it would take to have that maintained by a normal staff in a park environment or whatever it is. And so I think that's just part of the process, that maintainability would be put through in that early section, so that by the time our group is being presented, we would know that all the final candidates had been,
Vetted.
you know, had been able to vet that part out.
To Bob's point, if you had a consultant recommending one thing, that we felt that the community actually weighed in an opposite direction, and staff was recommending what the consultant did, what is our role? And I think what I'm hearing from Colleen is that, that our role is to make sure that the process, the integrity of the process was followed. If there's some glaring problem, we should alert the city that this isn't up to snuff in terms of the process. However, if the process is followed and we can see that even though the process is followed, we think that it provides a flawed end, that I think our role then becomes, well, you know, we need to tweak the guidelines. We need to, not on the project that was before us. If the process is followed, we should really recommend it. Because when this comes to city council, and I sit out there, I can guarantee you, one of these council members is going to ask me what I think, like it or not. So I think that the chair is kind of the cheerleader of the park program. So things come up before the council, chair's there saying, we did this, we followed, yada, yada, answering those kinds of questions. With the conflict, it's not that we should stop a project that comes before us, but we should recognize that we need to tweak the guidelines to avoid any problems that we might have identified in that particular project. We're a strategic voice. We're a strategic player, that we realize that we are not the selector, that we've outsourced that, and that we are asking this consultant to really do outreach well. And even though you follow every item in the contract, if it just doesn't look quite right, I think we can have that global sense about it, not to stop that particular recommendation, but to think hard about what we can do to establish guidelines to prevent that in the future. But that's my take on it. I don't know if that, I see you nodding. Does that make sense to you?
It
Bob?
does, I agree. I think that's a great interpretation of what I think our commission should do.
Is that kind of a consensus that where we want our commission to be? So that I'll get together with Allison and David, we'll try to craft something that describes that in a particular way so that we have a narrative of this is how we see us functioning forward. You know, we're not just hands off, we're hands-on, but we're a facilitator. We really want to, and we can have our input, through these guidelines, hopefully the staff will listen to our guidelines. So our guidelines will become even more important. The other item is identification markers. This has come up at varied times that, there was a time that Ray Detter told me that people wanted to get on the art commission because they wanted their name on the plaques that were going to sprout up all over the city. And they fought each other to get, on the art commission. Well, I don't see anybody, arm wrestling to get on our commission at the moment. And I'm not suggesting plaques would help us or not. But I do think that there should be something that identifies the artwork that's consistent. So that if you see a piece of art, that you don't have to guess who made it, when it was made, and if it has a title. And that if it is somehow a part of Ann Arbor's public art program. And I think that benefits the city. The question is, do you agree that we should have something like that? And how should the art commission be identified on that plaque? Should it be identified on that plaque? Should the names of the commissioners be identified on that plaque? I think there is reason to not include the art commission, just simply straight, it's just art. And there's reason to include the art commission that recognizes Ann Arbor has an art commission. And there's reasons to identify the art commissioners because, as you know, you've spent an awful lot of time, on this art commission. So that it's so simple to put a very small, name on a plaque. But I would like your input and feedback.
I mean, I think if there is a budget to make plaques and it can identify the artwork by the title of the artist and the collection is the City of Ann Arbor Art Commission and then the year it was installed, that would be plenty.
Yeah, I don't feel a need to have my name on any
No,
of the
I don't think
plaques.
individual names makes any sense.
I think it should be recognized as part of the city's public art program,
Yeah.
however that is worded.
Right,
Yeah.
whether it's saying the commission or City of Ann Arbor Public
Right,
Art.
I agree with that. I would want that to be talked about, the specifics of that. But I agree with Allison. I think the emphasis should be on the artist and the name of the piece and the year it was presented and the fact that it is a city work. And other than that, I think the more you put in there, when I see signs on construction projects and the mayor's list and whatever all gets put in there, it just muddies it up. I think it's much
Yeah.
nicer yeah, very much so.
Bob?
I would agree. I think if we can identify the artist's name, the name of the artwork, and then it was brought through from the art commission, I think that would suffice. I think there already is a plaque, or there are plaques at locations that identify the artwork possibly with the city council. So Stadium Bridge, under the bridge, on the underpass, there's a plaque. It might reference the bridge reconstruction itself, maybe not the artwork.
Correct, that one recognizes the bridge and the dedication of the bridge, but not the art.
So I think it would be appropriate because we have these locations and this artwork, so it would make sense to me as well.
So what I hear you saying is that we should identify the artwork and it should be kind of a consistent sort of branded plaque, and it should identify that this is a part of Ann Arbor's public art collection, public art commission, whatever way we want. There's no need to put the names of commissioners or the chair or vice chair or the mayor.
Little
Or-
line saying if you don't like it, call Craig Hubie.
That's right, that's right, that's right.
Quick.
I think that, never mind.
So, the question is there money for it? So there's a general consensus is that the Art Commission thinks these should be identified, and it should be a sort of branded plaque that ends up going on all of the art, the size of it, we don't know, something that people can sort of recognize and see that, one, Ann Arbor does have a public art collection. Do you need anything more to sort of think about how to proceed with that?
No, but there will be exceptions to what you want to do. Manhole art, we're not going to put a plaque on every manhole cover. Water towers are,
Can't get close to them.
you can't, yeah, for security reasons, you can't get close to them. So the general outline of what you want to do, yes, we can work something up, but there's going to be some variations or things that we can't do and don't have an idea of what it's going to cost yet. We'll have to look at that and see. But you've given us direction.
Good. And I think you pointed out some obvious places where a plaque wouldn't make any sense. Good.
I would say one caveat is, I would like to be somewhat involved when they're installed, as far as us getting a review of that. Just because I know that sometimes plaques can be placed in a way that they block the artwork, and I would want to make sure that doesn't happen.
That is a very reasonable
Okay.
viewpoint.
Just because I know when we did, when the Arts Alliance did the canoe project, there were a couple signs that ended up in spots that were a little, I would have recommended other places, so if we could be involved at that step, that would be great.
So art markers, we would like to talk about it.
Yeah,
And
we'll pursue it.
Good. So just to review, the art selection guidelines, the CAP committee will continue to review that and have some recommendations to us. The role of the art commission in the process, I have kind of a good idea, and I will get together with the committee chairs, and we'll have some kind of a description and narrative so that we are all on board as to how we're describing what our role is. And the public art markers, Mr. Hoopy will review and continue to report on it. So that takes care of our new business. Are there any other questions that staff report. These are some things that I asked Mr. Hoopy to continue to report on for us. We got a report at our last meeting, and I think this is much more detailed, and we have a better idea. That item number one, that the Manhole Art Advisory Committee, this is a contract that was let out to the Art Center, that they are asking that one of our commissioners be a part of their advisory committee. And I have asked Allison Buck if she would be willing to do that, and she said that she would love to, contingent on the plans of her newborn, whether your new baby is planning to arrive at an appropriate time or not. And so I've asked
David.
yes,
Sure,
David Esau to be a second for you if something happens. So just keep him in the loop. If he needs to step in, he will, but hopefully we will plan your pregnancy around our public art. Are there any other questions regarding report from staff?
I would just update number 3. 3, when it was put in, said the track lighting had been ordered and should be installed. Well, I would point out the back wall, the track lighting is actually now installed. So that
is
has,
the protective rail, right? Is that the protective rail?
Yeah, it looks like it.
it
Looks
may
like
be.
it.
I,
Yeah. Yep. You guys
So-
are ahead of schedule.
no, well, we're ahead of what we reported. So that is the only other comment I would say that is different than what we reported. And crosswalk art, the evaluation and updated, we are currently engaged with we have a set of engineering guidelines. It is in the attorney's office. And I will just leave it at that.
Okay.
There is a discussion of freedom of speech issues with that.
Very good. Are there any reports from committees? Commissioner Buck, do you have anything to report from your committee? Commissioner Issa?
No.
Nothing. Before we adjourn, I want to let you know that because of our meetings and because of the requirement that we need to vote on a new chair and vice chair before January 1st, we will be voting on that at the next meeting. Pursuant to that, as you all know, I have asked Colleen and David to form a committee, and they will be polling each of us, asking for our feedback of our sort of, our work, Allison or myself, who you think might have potential in the future, and also evaluating staff. So this is an opportunity for you to weigh in. And they will be presenting a slate of candidates at that meeting. And anyone that wishes to throw their name in the ring or someone else's name in the ring, you can do that. It will be an open nomination process. But I thought having both of these commissioners, they're new, and that they will have an opportunity to kind of evaluate the sense of our commission. So that's what's on the plan for our next meeting, and if there's nothing else, we are adjourned.
I seek a motion for adjournment.
Oh,
So moved.
it's
Second.
been moved and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.